Bam! MC is in the house. What is going on, folks? My name is Justin Garcia, also known as Master Chim, and welcome to the Warrior Stream. The Warrior Stream is my weekly live show that I do on the Master Chim official YouTube channel, as well as the Master Chim and Justin Garcia Facebook pages. I think I'm on Twitter too. I use a software that puts me on all these different platforms, but I'm here every week, Wednesday at noon Eastern Standard Time, talking about something that I usually mention in that morning's email, which leads me to the little bit of housekeeping that I have to do, which is if you have not yet gone to masterchim.com and put your email in, you are not getting my daily email. You should do it because I'm going to give you a program which is a balance management, think time management for somebody who doesn't want their life to fall apart program called Master the 24-Hour Cycle for free. So you go to masterchim.com, sign up for the email newsletter. You will get a $47 program for free just for doing that. And in this morning's email, I spoke about what we're going to be doing today. What do we got here? Big Joe, what's going on? Corey, what's going on? Good to see you. Jamie up in Canada, good to see you. Johnny Groove's in the house. What's up, Johnny? A lot of the usual suspects, which I like to see. Appreciate you guys chiming in. So today, we're talking about the battle is inevitable. The battle is inevitable. And I gave a couple of different talking points that I'd be covering today during today's talk, and I wrote them in this morning's email. And let's start off with the first one. Yarn Saxa, good to see you, darling. Glad you're well. Glad you're here. All right. So number one, why training is negotiable. So, I'm looking at the list that I wrote, and I got to be honest. Alan, what's going on, Alan? I got to be honest that I should probably start with the battle, right? The battle. And what is it that I'm talking about when I say the battle? Well, we have a saying, where it would be wise to never mind focusing on the battle, but winning the war. I forgot what exactly the saying is, but basically there is a hierarchy of conflict in a man's life that we should be paying attention to, and sort of our strategy should adhere to our understanding of what that is. The battles are your identity facing your surroundings, your ecosystem, the landscape of your life. Conflict itself is basically two identities trying to get their own way. And the friction that's caused by those two identities meeting is what we call conflict. And, there's many different applications of the word. But when I talk about the battle, it is this never-ending relationship with conflict. Because if we're going to have our way, we need to make our way. And everybody around us is doing the same thing. Every identity is doing the same thing. All right. So the idea of vying for and endeavoring to protect the integrity of one's identity is what self-alliance is built around. And this conversation, or the battle as it pertains to this conversation, is exactly what I'm referring to when I bring that up. So why training is non-negotiable. So non-negotiable is a word that I chose on purpose when talking about training, because it's not something that could sort of be modified. If something is 10 steps away, you cannot negotiate the distance between you and the thing to, say, 5 steps away. Now, I'm not talking about gaming the hypothetical whereby we say, well, we just take extra large steps. If we are limited to feet, 12 inches, feet, and we say it's 10 feet away, there is not a conversation to be had that is going to modify the distance between 2 points. And it is in that vein, or in that context, that I say training is non-negotiable. what outcome you want, assuming first of all that you have the influence, the control to create that output that outcome. Whatever it requires, and it is non-negotiable in that sense. We cannot train for, let's say, 10 minutes of a 20-minute fight, right? We're going to have 10 minutes of gas, and it's a 20-minute fight. Those things don't work. Well, I should say they work, but not the outcome that we're saying we want. All right. So in that context, again, training is non-negotiable. What it is that you see yourself as training for, meaning you're going to invest energy and effort and ritual into developing some sort of a skill or ability with an expected outcome. Well, what that outcome requires, of all of those variables I just mentioned, is what it's going to be. It is not any subset of that. So if I am working for $10 an hour and I work a half an hour, I do not get to say to my employer, well, you owe me for an hour. I just felt like stopping at 30 minutes, half an hour, but you owe me for an hour. There's plenty of different applications I could illustrate this with. I think I've made the point. It's non-negotiable. So that being said, a lot of people will have an opinion on what it is they want to do with their lives. What their goals are, what it is they're either by way of legacy, the big picture goals, what sort of transcendent value you are putting, into reality that'll extend beyond your own life. It could be what you want to accomplish, in the next hour or so, before the end of the day, whatever it happens to be. When we have these goals, we have a level of preparation in the pursuit of these goals, and the level of, or I should say, the act or ritual of preparation for a supposed goal is training, right? We are training. We can therefore say, and before I say the universal, let me give you an application and deduce the universal from it. If I was trying to squat for the first time in my life 200 pounds, and I've never squatted that before, I'm going to train and build my squat up, and then one day I am going to squat 200 pounds. Let's say that is the bookend of that process. To say that squatting 200 pounds then could somehow be disconnected from that level of preparation or training that preceded it is inaccurate at a minimum. It's impossible, because one would say, well, why not just wait until, if I have a 60-day, let's just say 60-day plan to train to be able to squat 200 pounds. The argument, well, let's just go and lift on the 60th day and we'll be able to do it. Well, that 60th day being valid is predicated on all the preparation prior to that being done, right? So again, in this way, to reduce or remove, rather, the training aspect of an accomplishment is to discard a part of the accomplishment itself. In that hypothetical that I drew, being able to squat 200 pounds includes the preparation for getting up to a 200-pound squat. We cannot separate those things. So again, training is non-negotiable. The outcomes you want in life cannot be disconnected from the training required to achieve them. So I would just argue, and again, talking with my mastermind group this morning, this came up in a slightly different application, but I said, my goal when working with people from a coaching standpoint is first and foremost to be congruent. Just do and say the same thing. So in this, there's this example of goal setting and people wanting to sort of divide the preparation training phase from the outcome phase. I would say that, well, if you don't want to do the training, you're not going to get the outcome. So your outcome should reflect what it is that you want to do, right? So don't start with the outcome. Start with what it is you want to do, and then pick a congruent outcome based on what that is. That's one way of being congruent. But I would say the more commonly desired, congruence congruence standard that could be established is, well, you say you want to do this, so let's bring the training up. Let's bring the preparation up to match that, right? So if your commitment of training is down here and your goal is up here, then you could do either of two things to become congruent. You could stop talking like you're going to get up here and start being realistic with what it is that you're accomplishing, with your level of preparation. Or you could say you want this accomplished, but you could also bring the level of your training up to match that and preparation to match that, right? So again, training is non-negotiable. If you are not going to do the work necessary to accomplish it, you are going to be better off not saying that that is what your goal is. Because every little bit of incongruence, every little bit of cognitive dissonance, the separation between what you say and what you do, every rep of that erodes the integrity of who you are. It erodes your belief in yourself, where doubt creeps in. It erodes the consistency and the respect you receive from the people around you, which begins to sabotage and undermine your reputation, right? So nothing good comes of those two things not matching. So if you're bringing your goals down or you're bringing your level of commitment and preparation up, either way, you are making it congruent, and pivots and adjustments can be made from those points, right? So that was training is non-negotiable. So moving on to the next point that I mentioned in this morning's email, the hard truths of the battle. The hard truths of the battle. So I think it's worth acknowledging or noticing that for the thumbnail for today's show, I picked and I used, my Midjourney bot, to generate the image. And the prompt to generate that image was something to the effect of a young boy prepares to battle a dragon, right? A young boy prepares to battle a dragon. So if you look at that image, that's exactly what's depicted there. You have a boy and he has this huge, broadsword strapped to his back. And there is a dragon who is ready to do dragon shit. And the boy in that instance could be you, the individual. It could be your next generation, your son or your daughter. It could be the mindset of your belief system. It could be the identity of your tribe. Whatever it is, when I say the hard truths of battle, it's really accepting that there are going to be some things that are not going to go your way. There are going to be some things that in order to accomplish them, in order to have the benefit from them, you're going to have to do some things you've never done, right? I'd say it's one of my big criticisms for a lot of the narcissistic social media culture that we're embedded in these days, where people look to be heroes without exposing themselves to risk, right? So if I've said before, if you're going to, I'm not the one who's created the model, but I've commented, in this way, that in order to be a hero, there must be a dragon and you must slay the dragon. All of this obviously being, figurative, metaphorical. But the point of it is, without that dragon, there is no heroism. So you have individuals out there that want to pride themselves on being a certain caliber of man, right? I am going to be a man of my word. I am a man's man. I'm a warrior. However you want to frame the positive, stamp on the version of man you represent. There needs to be a criteria by which that's measured or held against. how is it that you, as the man who wants to walk around saying that he is a good man, he is a strong man, a powerful, a warrior, and all these different things, without context, it sounds great. But when we start asking you to sort of validate these opinions, do you even have a criteria for that? And I would say that's one of the hard truths, is that if there is not a worthy opponent, you do not get the level of credit, for overcoming, those adversities. And if you're somebody that lives a soft life, well, I hate to break it to you, but there's no such thing as a soft hero. Like, you cannot be the strongest man amongst a group of weak men and consider yourself still to be strong. I would say strong is a much more universally applied requirement or achievement. To be a strong man, you have to do strong man shit. You have to overcome strong obstacles. When we call something a dragon, and I think when you look at it, and I don't know if it was Joseph Campbell, I don't know who exactly first coined, it's certainly a component of the hero's journey, but who first coined the phrase of slaying the dragon? I'm sure it goes, older than that. There's a reason they picked a dragon, like it wasn't even, the bear or the wolf or the, all these other, available, metaphors that could have been made. The idea of a dragon was conjured when thinking of this sentiment, because that is what it's supposed to be in the eyes of the individual. It's this level of adversity that you don't inherently expect to be able to overcome. There's something to be said for what happens to a man when his standards of masculinity, the standards of his character, sort of drive him to expose himself to risk, to a threat that he is not certain of the outcome in engaging. He is making himself vulnerable. This is what we look to prop up and admire and support when talking about, the strength of a good man, or the value, the utility of a good man. It's that when it comes down to it, he will do what he's obligated himself to do without the certainty of knowing the outcome of his actions and efforts, right? Big Ant in the house. There's no hero without a fight. That's right. Big Joe, good to see you. So instead of Jay Crussell, we got Joe Crussell now. Very good. Good to see you. So let me bring this back up. That, the hard truths of the battle, and I think that covers it. I think that when you look at, again, the thumbnail imagery, the thumbnail imagery of today's show, of the young child, and it could be, you as a child, it could be this version of you, this aspect of you who is still young and untrained, could literally be the children of your life. It could be the identity of a group, whatever it is. But the child with the big broadsword on his back, looking at the dragon, the idea of it is we're going to be facing that dragon someday, because when we are ready, when we mature, it's going to be our job to. And that is a truth of it. So the men out there who have been given the slack, in their lives to sort of determine who they want to be and what they want to do, I just understand that there are battles that you were destined to fight, and you will avoid them if you do not build yourself up to be the man ready to engage them. What do I mean by that? It's hard for me to respect a man who makes a lot of money but is a coward. It's hard for me to respect a man who is loved by his friends but may be hated or detested by his children or family. On the other end, it's hard for me to respect a man who is loved by the people that know him, but does not have the means to provide for the people who rely on him. And it also is hard for me to respect the man who does not make connections, it does not put himself out there and expose himself to those obligations, lest, he not be able to meet them. That latter category of men, those are the people that walk around, acting like they're undefeated, but they've never been in a fight. I know plenty of people who have never lost a fight, but if you ask them, they've never been in one either. And I think when it comes to, the masculinity, right, and what we consider to be a good man, sometimes we make the mistake of defining the sort of criteria by the absence of the negative. Like, well, do you have any kids that you're not taking care of? No. Do you have a wife that hates you? No. Do you have people who you owe money? No. Do you have people who are, waiting for you to support them? No. Must be a good man. But the opposite of it, of the snapshot of this individual may be, well, he's never married a woman. He doesn't have any children. He's never made promises or obligations or in the form of oaths to other people that would have them rely on him. So whereby, whereas he's never actually let any of these people down, it's really because he's never extended his word to cover those obligations in the first place. And that is that exposure. That is, how are you ever going to slay the dragon if you think, avoiding risk is always going to be the better decision to make, right? So those men that are raised to be risk averse, well, you scale that up in society and you look at what we have today. You have people who want to be treated like good men because there's some aspect that they're able to leverage successfully, being a part of the post-scarcity aquarium. They want credit for getting some stuff done or for being, a representation of some, noble attribute. But when it comes down to it, it's just they knew a guy and they managed to not get fired. They managed to last long enough where they accumulated some sort of physical amount of wealth. And but when you look at all the things that transcend the physical, the materialistic, there's nothing there, and you got to understand, like, the men that are out there. Big Sam Stern, what's going on, brother, man? Prometheus, good to see you. I appreciate the compliment. But the men that are out there that are ready to be good men. And I would say that they're ready to be good men, but there's nothing necessarily wrong with them. But it's sort of like, when you get a credit rating, there's this whole phase in the beginning of establishing credit, right? And it's, you get somebody to lend you a little bit, so you could show you pay them back. And then, people see that and your rating goes up and eventually you have great credit. Well, I would say the reputation of a good man is not too dissimilar from that. It's, if you're a man who people like, you're a man that people even like being around, but you've never accumulated a track record of being able to expose yourself to risk on principle and be able to follow through and see it through to a positive end, you just don't get the credit for being a good man. You could be around good men and maybe you won't provide you won't provide a distraction. You won't take away necessarily from the focus of the good men you're around. But at some point, you're going to become a liability, because the whole reason you're hanging around good men to begin with is because of the shit they got. You're hanging around them because they got stuff that you want. But how they got it is not a process you're familiar with. So what will happen with these men is they will make themselves amicable. They will make themselves, somewhat entertaining even to men of substance. And they'll find a way in that way. And, I'm not going to say it's necessarily malicious or even, devious in any way, but it is certainly weak. It is certainly lacking power. It lacks value in that sense also, because you're not really bringing anything to the table, and I just know too many people like this to really think it otherwise. I'm friends and allies with individuals that that aren't friendly per se, that aren't like, outgoing, extroverted, happy-go-lucky, oh, I'm gonna hang out with this guy, we're gonna have a great time and things like that. They may not be built that way, but these are men of substance, men who every time I interact with, there is value to be had. Men that are so valuable that when I'm entering into some sort of ritual with them, or some, some event, or spending time with these individuals, I am conscious of bringing value to the engagement because I know how much value that I get just being around them. Um, I also have those individuals that want to hang around me, and have, over the years, when they're not really offering anything, and sometimes we're fine right up until I bring that up, and then they don't want to hang around me anymore as much, right? And uh, it's just, you gotta look at it from the perspective that benefits you the most, I would say. The way I see it, it's my job to be as strong as I could be, so that I could support and protect the people who count on me, so I could bring value as a good investment to those people that do invest in me. Um, and looking at individuals today, I've said this during other conversations, we have been disconnected culturally from consequence. We don't understand the black and white nature of dealing with reality in the form of consequence. We're insulated, we're protected. There is a buffer of the harsh hand of reality and survival, and the experiences that we have in the modern world, certainly in the first world, right? Um, we don't have to wonder where the food is coming from. We don't have necessarily the threat that could pop up at any point. We don't have, this hand to mouth, every day you got to run predator or prey type of relationship with our lives. And certainly it's a testament to the success of the people that have come before us. They've given us this, but I would say not everybody is certainly pressured to have a level of gratitude for the gifts we've been given. And I would say, if you're an individual who's never really given this much thought, I think gratitude begins by reclaiming the identity that designed these types of surpluses in the first place, not taking any of these things for granted, right? So the last point that I brought up, why culture will always overpower context. Why culture will always overpower context. I will use raising children as the illustration of this point, and I will connect it to a concept that I wrote about in my book called the Transcendent Alliance. The Transcendent Alliance, as described in my book, I think the link's below. Yeah, the link should be below. Is a value, or the personification of a set of values that we look to build an alliance with. Now, historically, people will have gods, or a god in the form of a religion, play out this need, I would say, that people have for this transcendent alliance. The thing about the transcendent alliance is it provides an orienting level of clarity when it comes to our morality, our ethical habits, how we go about being good or bad, adding the context to what those terms mean. I think that what makes it valuable in its transcendence is that because we are such emotional creatures, we will lose our way from time to time. So having something that is out of our grasp, something that we cannot touch, is incredibly valuable. And it needn't be a religion, by the way. It could be a code. It could be a set of obligations given to a group in the form of an oath. It could be these are my rules for life, right? I think that we as individuals sometimes we lose sight of the fact just how flawed or inconsistent we can be. Our relationship with our surroundings can be. The lenses, the biases that we are affected by, all the way up to, suffering from in some instances. I think sometimes we lose sight of that. And how do we remedy that deficiency that we all have to some extent? We create this transcendent ally, this transcendent connection to a standard that allows us to orient ourselves. That, we ritualize checking in with this transcendent alliance. And when we do check in, we basically go through a process of going, well, where am I supposed to be going? Am I heading that way? What am I supposed to stand for? Am I exhibiting those qualities? And we get to do a sort of, an audit of who we are, and sort of have the opportunity to realign ourselves to where we need to go. So why I say culture will always overpower context is because whatever code you have, and sometimes, you could think that you don't have a call, you don't have a culture, but you absolutely do. And the not established, the omission of that is something that, has its own rule set. Not having a code of ethics, not having a criteria by which good and bad are determined, is a criteria. Because what it basically says is you are going to find validation for anything that placates your emotions. If you need some sort of cathartic ritual, you will go about doing that, and it's okay, despite what other effects and influences it has with your alliances or your landscape. Like, what are the second order, third order effects of your actions? How does that play itself out down the road? Well, somebody who doesn't have a code isn't really plugged into the timeline in that way. They're just, well, I want to feel better now. And again, without that consequence, and, my position is that we've been greatly removed from that relationship with consequence. We will create the stories that validate these decisions. I was overwhelmed, and just think about the idea of being burnt out, right? And it's something that not only I think exists. I will even say that I've experienced it myself in some applications, and I've even coached other guys through getting burnt out or how to avoid it, systemically, and how we approach this life. But just think about what being burnt out means about the society we live in. That we could afford to be burnt out. Compare that to somebody who is fighting every day against his surroundings to survive. Somebody's settling the West. Some hundreds and hundreds of years ago, family living in the middle of the wilderness during a harsh winter. Think about all of these people who have been in these do or die, survive or die scenarios, and think about how ridiculous it would be for them to have this phenomenon of burnout occurring, where somebody's like, you know what, I'm just tired of hunting every day. There's got to be a better way. I want, the consequence is so deliberate. It's so clear, in what it represents, that there's no time to create the story and to sort of consider not doing this as being even a valid option. Right. So sure, in today's society, it is a component of what we deal with. But even that is a testament to just how separated we are from that level of consequence. And we could say a good way to not burn out, and it's part of what I bring people through when dealing with this, is to pay attention to the energy that the rituals give you. And listen, I enjoy doing this, or this thing leaves me fired up, or it doesn't, this thing is so overlapped with who I want. I could be me and do this well. So there isn't a lot of burnout because I'm not running out of energy. I'm not running out of deficit energy wise. There's a whole system I have to navigating that with people, and I help them go through. But there was a point where consequence was so simple that it's, if you don't do this, you die, and it's like, yeah, I like living. So that's all the energy argument that I need to make. It's like, yeah, if I do this, I live. If I don't, I die. And we don't have that type of simple, clear relationship with what it is that we do these days, right? So I think that covers the points brought up in the email. Gotta hop off. Absolutely good to see you too, brother. I just taught the with Tuan Tom, Tuan Harley, and Bill Rapier, the Modern Warrior Conference this past weekend, and it was pretty epic. I had a really good time doing it. The energy was high this year. Great crowd. As I say, every time, no injuries, knock on wood. So everybody was good because guys were getting after it. And I appreciate all those guys that went. Tim Graves says, lifestyle injuries are usually the worst ones. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. It's like all the bad habits you have, because at some point you realize either consciously or subconsciously you can get away with it, right? So those sort of delayed consequences, sometimes those are the ones that you need the most discipline to navigate, to avoid altogether, because you're going to be able to get away with it for a while, right? All right, guys, I think I'm going to end it there. I went through my criteria pretty succinctly, I would say, and I'm doing 20,000 steps a day for this month, so I got to get after it. It is before 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I think I'm going to check my Fitbit. I'm looking at the app. Let me look at the Fitbit itself. I'm currently at 2,017 steps. So I have almost 18,000 steps to get after today. So I'm going to hop off and handle that. I appreciate you guys watching. If you guys are watching this and you have not yet signed up to my email list, like, what are you waiting for? Not only is it free, but I'm also giving you a $47 program for doing it. You can go to masterchim.com and you will see the details there. All right, guys, I'm here every week, noon on Wednesday, Eastern Standard Time, for the Warrior Stream. I hope you appreciated this talk. I appreciate you sitting here while I give it. And shout out and gratitude to all the people that commented and share my stuff and all that other stuff. I appreciate you. I will see you next time. And as always, brothers and sisters, pressure to power.